Hello, Wargamers! Welcome to Gigantic Games. I'm Gary, and today we're going to be talking about Thousand Suns units and a general overview of them. So, what we'll be talking about today is going to be as follows. What the criteria for today, what role they fill, their general abilities, what other units compete for its place in the army, whether I believe they are over or undercosted or fair costed. I will not be going over the Zinchian demons because they're only useful in one detachment, and I believe that a video going over them should be focused on their uses in that one detachment and not as a general overview. Speaking of all that, let us begin. So first we have our characters, which I'm going to resize my camera real quick. Da-da-da-da. There we go. So, characters. The first character on today's list is Ahriman. His role generally for us is going to be a caster and a support unit, mostly as a caster. I gave him the caster title because he does have a +1 to cast inbuilt for himself. That +1 to cast is very important because that means without channeling the warp on 2d6, your average roll should be a 7, and channeling the warp, your average roll is going to be an 11.5, which means you are more than likely, if you channel, going to get the big version of every single one of our rituals, with the exception of Twist of Fate. So, he can lead Rubrics and Zangor Enlightened. He also has a redeploy of 3 units. Redeploy is kind of so-so. I've found using armies in Imperial Guard and here for Thousand Suns that without a redeploy, I don't deploy as if I need it. And when I use the redeploy, I use it strategically with infiltrators more often than not to deny things from my opponent before redeploy the unit into a better position. If you have a good plan to start the game, you generally don't need to redeploy. So his shooting is not great. It's okay. It's D6 plus 1 shots, strength 6, AP 1, D3 damage. His melee is at strength 7, AP 1, 3 attack, 3 damage. Overall, he's competing with the other sorcerers, Exalted on disc and not on disc, and the normal sorcerer and Infernal Master. I think they just give more. He is currently 100 points, and I believe that is overcosted. He does not provide enough utility for our army for him to cost as much as he does, especially as an epic hero, where we can only take 1. So, moving on to our next character, we have Exalted Sorcerer on disc. This is a direct competitor to him. He also costs 100 points, but I believe his cost is fair. So what is his role? He is a support role. He's a support role because of his abilities and what he gives to the units. He can lead Rubrics or Zangor Enlightened again. When he's leading a unit, that unit has an 18-inch lone op, which is very good. It prevents a long-range shooting, means they have to get close to you. And Rubrics are a mid-range fighting unit where they can do a lot of damage mid-range. Zangor Enlightened, especially Zangor Enlightened with Fate-Grasted Great Bows, can use this to basically stay alive. It makes our paper-thin units surprisingly durable. He also has an 18-inch D6 Flamer at damage D3, which combines with his second ability, which is a slow debuff. Anything he hits with the Flamer, with exceptions of monsters and vehicles, gets -2 to movement, -2 to charge. Combine this with Zangor Enlightened's reactive move, and all of a sudden you have a nearly unchargeable unit, if used correctly and smartly. We also have ways to increase range of psychic weapons, especially in Grand Coven. Like I said, I believe he is fair costed because he provides just that much utility. And if you take him solo, you still have the slow ability, you lose the lone op. So he can be a fast action monkey by himself, just going around the board, slowing something and moving away. Our next character, of course, is Exalted Sorcerer. I believe he is fair costed. He is our second cheapest sorcerer option. His role is a support role. He can only lead Rubric Marines. However, when leading a unit, he grants them a 4+ infall, making the whole squad a 3-up, 4-up, which can be very good for survivability. And in your command phase, he will either possibly kill a Marine or revive up to 2 Marines, based off a die roll. On a 1, your unit takes D3 mortals. On a 2 through 5, you revive 1 Rubric Marine. On a 6, you revive 2 Rubric Marines. That can be very useful in combination with other units like the Demon Prince, or in a 10-man brick where you can manipulate which Marines are getting wounded such as the Aspiring Sorcerer, taking him out first so that when you revive him, you're getting 3 wounds back instead of 2. His shooting is okay. It's a D6 blast at strength 6, AP 2, D3 damage, but it has devastating wounds inbuilt. Very useful. I believe he is fair costed. Good support role, however, doesn't give enough for us because even with a 3-up, 4-up, Rubric Marines just aren't that tough. Now going on to a more contentious take, the Sorcerer. He is a damage dealing leader for us. He can lead rubrics. While leading a unit, he gives the unit lethal hits, which is very useful because he himself gets lethal hits from it, and his shooting already has sustained hits 3. His other ability is once per game, he can add 3 strength and 3 attacks to his shooting. His shooting profile of 6 attacks at strength 5, AP 1, 1 damage, sustained hits 3, combined with lethal, and combined with his once per game, means you can get 9 attacks at strength 8. Well, without hit rerolls, those 9 attacks, you'll miss 3, but you should get 1.5 back in sustained or lethal. So that means you're getting anywhere from 3 to 6 back based off missing 3. Strength 8 means you're wounding almost all infantry models on 3s, most on 2s. And there's other ways we can improve the strength of his attack or give him +1 to wound just to make him that much better, especially when re-rolling wound rolls. I believe he is fair costed as well. He costs slightly more than our Exalted Sorcerer right now. Now, on to the next other direct competitor for his role, the Infernal Master. Infernal Master is a damage dealing unit for us. He leads Rubric Marines as well. He gives them sustained hits, which isn't as good because his main shooting is a taunt weapon, just like the Infernal Rock Flamers you're probably taking. However, it does mean that the Aspiring Sorcerer and the Soul Reaper Cannon do have sustained hits instead of lethal hits. His big thing is he can flip 1 hit, wound, or save per turn to a 6. So that means if you're in Grand Coven and you have the devastating turn up, after you do your reroll wounds, you can change 1 non-devastating or 1 non-wound into a devastating wound. It's an 18-inch flamer attack at strength 6, AP 2, 1 damage. It does not ignore cover. However, we have enough shenanigans with AP with our rituals that we don't necessarily worry about AP too much when we want to target dead. His flamer is good for shooting and overwatch because it's either a D6 or 2d6 with hazardous. You're almost always going to shoot him with the hazardous, giving you 7 hits on average. I believe he is also fair costed. He costs more than the Exalted Sorcerer and the Sorcerer at the time. So, those are our direct competitors for leading rubrics and for the Exalted. Now on to other characters we have. We have the Sorcerer in Terminator Armor. He has no competition for what he does, because he is our only unit that leads Scarab Occult Terminators. He is a damage-dealing piece and a buff piece for the Scarab Occult Terminators. He grants lethal hits to the Scarab Occult Terminators, which works very well with the Infernal Combi Bolters, and his own Infernal Combi Bolter, and the missiles, and the Soul Reaper cannons. And his other ability is a unit that is visible to him. He can add 1 to the hit and shooting for his unit. So now all your Terminators are hitting on 2s. So even if you get the small reroll hits, you're still rerolling all hit rolls. You may not be able to fish for lethals anymore, but you're more than likely going to hit every shot. His psychic attack is anti-monster, anti-vehicle, and shooting with devastating wounds. And even if you don't hit the devastating wounds, it is still AP 3 shots. So he has good shooting. His melee is fairly good with a normal strength 6, AP 1, D3 damage that almost all of our sorcerer characters have with a force weapon. Or he can take a Khopesh. I generally will not take a Khopesh on him. I have enough Khopeshes in the squad. The force weapon is psychic. It just benefits better. And he is fair costed because he's the only one that does it. He costs less than 100 points. And he could be a significant buff to the Scarab Occult Terminators that he's leading. Our next character also doesn't really have competition, except for maybe the Enlightened and Armin. But he can lead Zangor or Zangor Enlightened. So he gives his unit +1 to hit. He's a support chaff unit. And in your shooting or fight phase, you can kill one bodyguard model and add D3 attacks and D3 strength to his shooting or melee. His shooting is a D6 blast, strength 9, AP 0, 1 damage with devastating. The AP 0 really hurts because you don't want to put too much effort into him because he's going to be the only model in that unit generally that's going to be doing any damage unless you put it with some Zangor Enlightened, in which case you may not want to sacrifice one of your bodyguard units just to give him the extra strength and attacks. His shooting and melee are both fairly bad. However, he is a low-costed, so fair, for what he gives us, Psyker. He's a that we can move around quickly to cast spells from weird angles, especially when combined with the Zangor's ability to uppy downy every turn. However, you're not going to see him much. If you have the points to put him, you might run 1 or 2 of him just to get an extra caster if you don't have enough casters in your army. Our next character, of course, going to the monstrous characters, we have the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. I really like the Demon Prince of Tzeentch. He's a caster and damage. He has a conditional lone op that requires him to be near other Thousand Suns infantry. Fairly easy to do, especially when combined with his next ability, which is a 6-inch stealth aura. So if he's near the Rubric Marines are giving him lone op, and he's giving the Rubric Marines stealth. And his other ability is he can get up to +2 to cast. So every time a Thousand Suns Psyker unit dies within 9 inches of him, he gets +1 to cast for the rest of the game, which can go up to a +2 to cast. So he is one of the only 3 characters that has inbuilt ways to get bonuses to cast. And I just said before with Armin, +1 will put you at, on 2d6, averaging an 8, and on 3d6, averaging 11.5. +2 means your average on your 2d6 is 9, and for 3d6, it's 12.5. He also has a good shooting and melee profile. His melee profile is either a strike or sweep, both with devastating wounds. His strike is at strength 8, his sweep is at strength 6. His strike also is AP 2, 3 damage. Great for taking out Terminators and for going into vehicles. With different enhancements we have in different detachments, we can improve the strength of his psychic attacks, which his melee is, so that it breaks to the strength 9 or strength 10 breakpoints. His shooting has sustained hits built in, and it's 9 attacks at strength 4, AP 1, 1 damage. Just a good volume attack, great for clearing out hordes of infantry, especially when he's hitting on 2. I believe he is fair costed right now, a little bit expensive, about 185 points. And now we're going to move on to the other Demon Prince, the Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings. He is a damage and an assassin. He does not have the lone op, however he does have conditional hit rerolls on character units. So if he's shooting at a character unit, he reroll hit rolls of 1, and if it's a Psyker character unit, he rerolls the hit rolls. He also has a 6-inch deep strike, the Adler Stride. When he does this, his shooting goes from sustained hits 1 to sustained hits D3, which can be very good for taking out characters. He's faster than the Demon Prince on foot. He does not have the stealth aura though. However, his melee and shooting profile are the same. Both have devastating wounds in melee, and his shooting profile can be sustained hits 1 or sustained hits D3. He is fair costed at about 175 points at the time of this recording. So those are our 2 Demon Princes. Demon Prince of Tzeentch with Reigns definitely should be considered in some list, especially if you're thinking about playing like Hexwarp Thrallbrand. However, I really like the Demon Prince on foot, and I'm trying to find ways to fit him into more lists. So our next, and I believe last character, is Magnus the Red. He's a caster, he's a damage dealer, he's a tank. He's also support. He always has a +2 to cast and can attempt to cast twice. Now that is huge, because that basically means you're getting 2 large rituals every time. He also has Aura the Crimson Cane. You pick one of his Crimson Cane abilities, either a 2-inch move aura out to 6 inches, or a unit within 24 inches in your opponent's shooting phase. All their guns are now hazardous, or he gets -1 damage to self. Out of all of these, the 2-inch move aura in the early game to get your army moving, spread out, and get into those positions where you can strike at any objective you need so you can castle up is very strong. And the -1 damage to self is a very good defensive buff on the T11 2-up armor 4-up invul that Magnus already has. He has a very strong melee and shooting with devastating wounds built into his melee, and his shooting being the 3d3 shots at strength 11, AP3, 3 damage, and his other shooting are having ignores cover at d6 plus 3, strength 6, AP1, 2 damage. He's just standard, very good, arguably the best Demon Primarch right now. He does more than Mortarion does for his army, he does more than Fulgrim, and he does more than Angron. However, Fulgrim and Angron might beat him in a straight-up damage output. He has shooting and range, shooting and melee and support. He is not to be underestimated, especially once we start adding stratagems to the mix. That can just change the math whatsoever. So that was it for our characters, and now we're going to move on to infantry and mounted units. I'm not going to have a battle line section because we only have one battle line choice in this. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about them. Rubric Marines. They're our basic troop choice and also a damage piece. So they reroll wound rolls of 1s unless an opponent is on an objective we don't control, in which case they get the whole wound roll reroll, which can be very devastating, especially combined with the characters we were talking about earlier. Infernal Masters and Sorcerers love this. With the Icon of Flame, that their unit gets ignores cover. This does not go over to any attached characters, but if you do take a Inferno Bolter squad, for the extra range, the AP2 is now ignores cover. The Warp Flamers already have ignores cover. Generally, most people are going to go with Warp Flamers over Inferno Bolters. Warp Flamers are a better general use. You just get more attacks with them with the reroll wounds. You're more likely to kill more. However, there is some cases where the Bolters can be very useful. In those cases, you might have one 10-man squad or one 5-man squad in the back line. So they do have an inbuilt Psyker with an anti-infantry spell. That is the Aspiring Sorcerer. And they're just great mid-range shooting. And I believe they are fair costed. We are an elite army, and sometimes I just wish we weren't, but they are fair for everything they can give to us, and they are a solid backbone to any list. Our next infantry is the Scarab Occult Terminators. Right now, Scarab Occult Terminators are taking the world by storm. They are tanky, and they deal damage. So, their ability is, if they have a Psyker in their unit, or attached to their unit, they are -1 to wound. This is not -1 to wound if strength is greater than toughness. It's always -1 to wound. So, you're always pretty much going to be wounded on 3s or better, most likely 5s and 6s. They deep strike. Very useful to have because we are not generally a fast army. They have an inbuilt Psyker with anti-infantry, the Aspiring Sorcerer, just like the Rubric Marines. So this is a big thing though. That is a Psyker model in the unit which activates the -1 to wound, and if you don't have a character attached, they cannot precision out the Psyker because the Psyker is not a character with an attached unit. They all have Kopeshes. The Kopeshes are Strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, which is honestly some of our best melee. It's still a little lackluster, but we're not a melee army. They have lots of combi bolters with 2 shots, rapid fire 2 each. They have missile racks, and they can take a Soul Reaper cannon or a heavy Warp Flamer. Most people are going to be taking the Soul Reapers because of the Strength 6, AP2, 1 damage with devastating wounds. I still believe they're overcosted, mostly because we don't have many choices for list building right now at a highly competitive level. And we just need more data sheets or for some things to come down in points. Our next unit is the Chaos Spawn. I love these guys. They're a utility, chaff, scoring unit. Their ability to restore 3 wounds to 1 model every command phase, that is your command phase and your opponent's, means if they don't kill the model's at full health every turn. They have 8 inches of movement, a 4-up armor, 5-up invul, 5-up feel no pain. So they just have to dedicate enough firepower with enough damage to kill them, which can be difficult. The 5-up feel no pain makes that seem like some very weird math. Being 4 wounds a model makes that math weird. They are OC1, so they can take an objective. Very easy for that objective to be switched. But if we don't control the objective, our Rubric Marines are very good at clearing them off, so the Chaos Spawn will control the objective again. They become a very good action piece because they'll take more than just incidental fire to actually take them off the board. They don't have any shooting, but their melee is semi-decent. Their melee is hitting on 4s at d6 plus 3, or correction, d6 plus 2 hit shots, attacks, a model, strength 5, AP 1, 2 damage. Great for killing Marines. And I believe they are currently undercosted for the value they provide to us. So our next unit is the Zangors. I believe these guys are fair costed and cheap. As they roll, they are utility, shaft, screen, and they are only scouting unit. So they have a return to reserves ability if no enemy models within 6 inches of them. Makes them very useful. If you stick your home objective, you can have them walk on and off from your back line until you need them to go do an objective or a secondary elsewhere on the table. I've done that multiple times before where turns 1, 2, 3, and 4, they just screened down my back line 6 inches from the board edge, came off, came back on, came off, came back on in the same place until I drew something like behind enemy lines or engage on all fronts where they're off the table, walk them in, and I don't really care if they die. They have war gear abilities as well. Their Brayhorn gives them reroll advances and charges, which can be very useful because they are a shaft unit. Rerolling an advance without using a CP means they can scout their 7 inches, do their move, and advance. And you roll one of the advance, you don't have to worry about spending the CP to reroll. You just get a reroll. They have a bonus leadership going to leadership 6 when they're on objectives. However, their melee and shooting is not great. A lot of competitive players right now are taking them with chain swords and auto pistols, and I understand why. The chain sword is just a better melee option than the Zangor blades right now, and the auto pistol is a shooting option. I, however, am taking them with Zangor blades just because that's how I have them modeled. Our next is the Zangor Enlightened. These are our utility shaft beast, and this is, I think, our cheapest unit we can take right now. They provide mortals on a charge, so after a charge roll for each model in engagement range on a 4-up, you deal mortal wounds. They can take chain swords and auto guns. I would not suggest that, or they can take their Divining Spear, which is a strength 5 AP2, 2 damage, precision lance in melee. Very useful. OC2, and with a 5-up invul, they will still die to almost everything. However, they're cheap, they're fast, and they can do a surprising amount of damage with the mortals if you get a good charge. However, comparing these to their direct competition, I don't think they win, and their direct competition is the Zangor Enlightened with Fatecaster Greatbow. They are a utility shaft scoring piece, and arguably one of the best data sheets we have right now. Their ability is a reactive move if someone gets within 9 inches of them. So a d6-inch reactive move allows them to be safe, go behind, get out of shooting lanes, maybe get out of charge ranges. Their shooting profile is good, but has definitely a low volume, each one having 2 shots, hitting on 4s, strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, lethal hits, precision, ignores cover. They are, however, a great piece in combination with characters. Adding a Zangor Shaman means they're hitting on 3s, but the big one is the Exalted Sorcerer on disc, which gives them an 18-inch loadout. So if an enemy ends 8 inches away from you, you get a d6 reactive move, so now they're 11 inches away from you. And you could do some shenanigans because the Enlightened Sorcerer on disc is an infantry and mounted, so he can go through walls. So put them behind a wall, stick out the Enlightened, have him flame something to slow it, they get close, you jump behind the wall, now you're out of line of sight. They are fair costed and cheap, but they cost a little more than our normal Zangor Enlightened. So, that was it for our Infantry, now we're going into vehicles and monsters. Some of these are great, some of these are confused. I'm not going to lie to y'all. So first up, we have the Chaos Rhino. It is a transport and support piece and is amazing. So its ability is, when it shoots a target, units that disembark from it that shoot psychic attacks at that target get +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So, and it can hold 12 models. So it can hold 2 units of rubrics with characters attached. So that could be a lot of psychic attacks that are now hitting on 2s or wounding on 5s at worst. It has an okay volume in shooting against screen and chaff, actually kind of surprising amount, because you can take 2 Inferno Combi Bolters or 2 Inferno Bolters and a Havoc Launcher. So the 2 Inferno Bolters is going to give you 4 to 8 shots at Strength 4, AP 2, 1 damage. And the Havoc Launcher, D6 blast at Strength 5, AP 0, 1 damage. Help you clear away some guardsmen, some cultists. But also enough shots to pretty much guarantee the hit to activate its first ability for your sorcerers. It's as tough as any standard light transport at toughness 9 and a 3-up armor save. I believe it is fair costed for what it provides, which is a very good way to move and upgrade our damage with our characters. Next on the transport tanks, we have the Chaos Land Raider. It's a tank and a transport. It has assault ramp, so that means after it's moved and a unit disembarks, that unit is available to charge. Not very useful for us because we don't really have any units that we want to charge into melee with most of the time. The closest thing we have would probably be the Scalable Cult Terminators, which it can only fit 5 plus a character in. It, however, does have 4 las cannons, which is one of our best ways to get anti-tank right now. However, at its point cost, that's a little bit too much. It is our only T12 model with a 2-up armor save, so tough to deal with. We just don't have good units to utilize its transport capacity. And right now, it being costed at 220 points, we just have other options that can do the anti-tank job. Maybe not better, but similar at much lower cost. Speaking of which, we're going to go to one of those right now, the Chaos Predator Annihilator. It is the anti-tank vehicle that we have. So it can reroll a hit and damage against monsters and hits and damage against monsters and vehicles that have been hit by a psychic attack. It has 3 las cannons, with one of them being twin-linked. It is slightly better defensively than a Rhino. It still has a 3-up save. And it is fairly cheap right now at about 130 points. So this, I haven't had time to test it out myself because I don't own one yet, but it is either going to be an under or fair costed in my opinion, looking at the data sheet and how you can put it in, and the fact that it's a much smaller body than the Land Raider, so it can actually move around the table a lot better. Next, the other Predator, the Chaos Predator Destructor. So this is an anti-elite tank. Its ability is to improve the strength and AP of its attacks by 1 if it's shooting a non-monster vehicle that has been hit by a psychic attack. Again, same defensive profile as the Chaos Predator Annihilator, so just a little better than the Rhino. It has an autocannon and can take many Inferno Bolters. So Inferno Bolters are pretty much the same as normal bolters, except we have better AP, and it has some heavy bolters attached as well. The autocannon being Strength 9, AP 1, 3 damage, goes to Strength 10, AP 2, 3 damage, and we can increase the ammo more. So it would be a great option for dealing with anti-elite. However, our Rubric Marines and characters generally do that job just as good. And you would be taking those anyway in order to get the better AP and strength characteristics. I believe it is fair costed, but it does cost 10 more points than the Chaos Predator Annihilator, at this one being at 145. I believe that these should be reversed. However, I'm not going to complain when we have a good thing going. Our next is the Chaos Vindicator. This is another tanky vehicle of ours with a 2-up armor save. And its job is anti-tank, even though it is good against most all targets. Its ability allows it to shoot its blast weapon into its own engagement, and when shooting into engagement, it doesn't take any negatives. Being T11, 2-up save, is one of our toughest vehicles and toughest models on those characteristics. Demolisher Cannon is just good into all targets at D6 plus 3 shots with Blast, hitting on 3s, AP 3, Strength 14, so wounding almost all targets on 3s or better, and D6 damage. I believe it is fair costed right now at 185 points. So, if you have one, maybe slot one in. See how it works. I think they would be good as a 1 of, maybe a 2 of, but we don't have a lot of points to work with as Thousand Suns right now. Next, we have the Secretary robots. These are only infiltrating units, so their role is very simple. They are our infiltrator. Unit comes in units of 2 or 4, and they can do an Overwatch or Heroic Intervention for free. However, this is not a second one. This is the first one. You only still can do one, but you don't spend CP for it, which is very nice because we are a very CP-dependent army at times. They have in-belt stealth, and with a 3-up armor, 5-up invul, and toughness 6, makes them surprisingly effective at taking some small arms and medium arms damage. Their weapon profiles, they have the normal heavy warp flamer, and they can have a Melta gun or a second flamer and a power claw. The second flamer and power claw is the way I would say you want to take them 9 times out of 10. It makes their Overwatch better, and it gives them decent melee profile. They also have missile racks. I believe they are fair costed now that they have gone down in points a little. However, it's still difficult to fit them into most lists. I expect we'll see more of them if Hexwarp Thrallbrand picks up. Excuse me. So our next unit we have is the Mutalith Vortex Beast. He's amazing. He does everything we want him to do. He is tanky, and he just has a good damage profile into everything. So, at the end of his movement, he can cause mortal wounds and battle shocks in a 6-inch aura around him. He also has a 6-inch aura of +1 to cast if you channel the warp. +1 to cast can be huge for us because it means we're more likely going to succeed than fail. He has an anti-tank, an anti-marine, and an anti-guardsman shooting option. The anti-tank being a 1-shot at hitting on 3s, strength 18, AP 3, D6 plus 6 damage, devastating wounds. His anti-marine is a strength 9, AP 2, 2 damage, D6 plus 3 blast weapon, and then he has a 2d6 ignores cover turret weapon at strength 6, AP 1, 1 damage. His shooting, he has a shooting option for everything, and his melee, he has a strike and a sweep profile. The strike profile being at AP 2, 3 damage, the sweep profile being at AP 0, 1 damage. Sweep profile having 15 attacks, the strike profile having 5. Both are hitting on 3s. I believe he is fair cost of what he does, but he is currently sitting at about 165 points, which makes it hard to fit in more than 2 of them in most lists, but you would probably want 1 to 2 in almost all lists because they also have the 4-up armor, 5-up invuln, 5-up field of pain, which makes them surprisingly tanky, even with their toughness 10 body. Our next monster and vehicle we have is the Forge Fiend. So he is more of an anti-elite, anti-horde weapon. He can punch up because of the number of shots with the ectoplasms, and he is surprisingly tanky at toughness 3 and a 5-up invuln. So after he shoots a target, that target gets -1 to hit until your next command phase. The ectoplasm cannons are strong into almost all targets, being a D3 blast, having 3 of them, strength 10, AP 3, 3 damage. He can be very strong when combined with rituals, either giving us reroll hit rolls, increasing the AP if necessary. Yeah, I currently believe that he is a fair costed unit and one of our cheaper units right now at about 135 points. Mauler Fiend is very similar in points cost. However, his role is melee damage, and he's a counter-charge unit. He's probably our only melee damage unit that I would consider very powerful right now for just melee damage. So he can use a heroic intervention for 0 CP, and he can do it after we've already done with something else. And he can reroll charge rolls into a unit that is engaged with one of our Psyker units. So, potentially, they charge into our Scarab Occult Terminators. He can charge Heroic for free, or you can Heroic with the Scarab Occult Terminators into a unit, and then have him Heroic as well for 0 CP, and then he gets to reroll that charge roll. He has a very strong melee profile at Strength 14, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage, 5 up invuln. I believe he is fair costed. However, we probably won't see a lot of him because we generally try to avoid melee, and there are tricks to do that rather than rely on him for melee counter charge. Honestly, I'd probably just take a Forge Fiend over him most days. Next, we have the Defiler. He is just a general damage piece. So when he's moving, he can ignore terrain features 4 inches or less. His Overwatch hits on a 5-up, or if he's within 6 inches of a Psyker unit, a 4-up. He has a strong shooting and melee profile. However, it's all build dependent. This is a very, very customizable model based on which weapons you want to take. I cannot tell you the best build from it. Good damage, but it feels like he's confused in what role he's supposed to provide for the army list. He has a strong defensive profile and has a field of pain. However, he, I believe, is overcosted and doesn't really have a good home spot or role for our list. You can build him to fill almost any role, but not as good as we have other options and tools to do the same. Very cool model, though. Our next is the Hellbrute. Just general damage and tankiness. He can force battle shocks on enemy units after he's shot. If he takes multiple melee weapons, he gets +2 attacks for those melee weapons, but he doesn't. Not all of his melee weapons have extra attacks. He has a good melee and shooting options, but you need to build him for those options. 2+ armor, 5+ invuln. I believe he's fair costed, but he's still relatively slow and kind of confused. You can build him into a ranged anti-tank, melee anti-tank, ranged anti-horde, melee anti-horde. You can build him to fit in with what you need in your army, but I don't think he excels at any one thing particularly. Next, we have the Helldrake. He is an anti-fly, anti-horde unit that is suffering greatly from Games Workshop hatred of flying units. However, he does have hover mode, so he can be useful at times. When he moves over a unit, you pick one of the units he moved over, that unit cannot benefit from cover. Doesn't impact us that much because Rubric Marines already ignores cover, and we have a lot of flamer weapons that ignore cover naturally. His shooting is okay, but not super impressive. The D6 +3 shots from the Bale Flamer, or the 6 shots from the autocannon. His melee has a decent number of attacks, and anti-fly 2-up with devastating. Means he can rip a Catan apart, but the Catan is also just going to hit him. We're not hurting for his ability of ignores cover because we just have so much for it. He's overcosted like all flyers are right now, and he's not as durable. He needs a little bit of love for us to really consider taking him and playing with him, especially in this terrain environment. So those were all the models we have so far for General Thousand Suns units overview. My conclusions are very simple. We can be very strong. You just have to be sure on what units you're bringing, why you're bringing them, what roles they're providing, and what your local meta looks like. You could have a local meta where having more Zangor is important because you need to just strain out, have more mobility with Uppy Downy, or have a better screen. Or you might go into a meta where more Rubric Marines are better. We don't have any significant melee or long-distance threats. We have a couple sprinkled in, but we are mostly a mid-range army, fighting somewhere in the 6 to 18-inch range. Overall, we have a low toughness, but an overall high damage potential. Our unspoken army rule is we got an extra pip of AP compared to everyone else, so we can bring down a lot more targets, and we just have devastating wounds everywhere. We can force so many devastating wounds through that we can ignore armor saves more often than not. And throwing devastating wounds and casting spells, it's just fun. Who doesn't want to be part of the Space Wizard Magic Money gang? Your opponents may not like the Space Wizard Magic Money gang, but I hope y'all appreciate them. Thank you for watching today's video. If you could, comment, like, subscribe. Tell me how to do better. Tell me I'm doing terrible. Tell me I'm doing great. All of that is appreciated. This is Gary, signing off.